call this meeting to order at 5:59 p.m. I want to acknowledge that we are in Treaty 1 territory and that the land in which we are meeting is the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Cree, Ojibwe, Oji-Cree, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. As a council and as a municipality, we will continue to work on moving forward in partnership with Indigenous communities in the spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. I'd like a motion for the adoption of the minutes, please.
Resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held at City Hall on February 27th, 2023 be adopted as circulated.
Moved by Councillor Massey, seconded by Councillor Porter. All those in favor? And that's carried. We have no delegations this evening. We do have one public hearing, a request for variation PC 7-23, Hope's Journey Home, Inc., 687 Tupper Street North. I'll ask if we have anyone present in favor, to speak in favor of the application. Did you want to come to the microphone and state your name, please?
Rod Martins.
Hi, Rod. Did you have a statement to make or just here to answer questions?
I was just here to answer questions.
Okay, thank you. Do we have anyone else in favor of the application to speak? No? Do we have any letters in favor to be read out?
No, we don't.
Oh, sorry.
My name is Margaret Ethier. I was a former owner of 687 Tupper Street. I just wanted to talk to the owner of it, of the property now.
Are you speaking in favor?
Yes, I am.
Okay, go ahead.
I can go ahead?
Yeah.
I just wanted to talk to them about the...
Oh, sorry, you have to talk to council tonight at this.
Oh,
You have to direct anything you want to talk to them to council tonight.
I just wanted to direct my words to the owner. I would like to see the corner filled in. It looks like an eyesore with it's empty.
Okay, thank you. Could you say your name again, please?
Margaret Ethier, E-T-H-I-E-R.
Margaret Etier. Okay, thank you. We'll make note of that, Margaret. Thank you. Okay. Is there any letters in favor to be read out?
No, there are not.
Is there anyone present to speak against the application? Again, anyone present to speak against the application? Are there any letters to be read out?
There is one letter to be read out. And it was signed by 13 neighbors. And they said, the residents in the area of the proposed Hope's Journey home building are opposed to the changes in the variances, the proposed design, and where it is being set on the lot. With the proposed building being as big as it is, they are using a shoehorn to fit the building on this lot, reducing the front yard requirement from 9.1 meters down to 2 meters. And with the building being set to the front of the lot, we can't see how the corner restriction bylaws are being met. The sight lines and safety for proceeding onto Tupper Street would be compromised. With Tupper Street North and 7th Avenue being very busy streets, this isn't acceptable. And being a corner lot, setting the proposed building back on the lot and parking in the front would definitely make more sense. We also can't see how the projections into required yards bylaw is being met if these variances are being reduced that much. In relating to providing open spaces around buildings for purposes of privacy, fire protection, and maintenance operations along the walls of the buildings, we don't think 1.5 meters is enough from south property line. We are definitely against them having their parking area at the rear of the building. It would make more sense to set the proposed building back and have their parking in front of the building where there is already easy access off of Tupper Street and 7th Avenue using the existing driveways that all previous building owners used on this lot. Also, parking would then be close to the main entrance of the building. If parking in the back, access to the parking area would have to be down a narrow back lane and along a residential fenced property to get in and out of their lot. Staff and residents would be coming and going at different hours during the day and night, and it would not be the safest situation for them getting to and from their vehicles in the back lane, especially at night. Another area of great concern, especially for us in the immediate area, would be snow clearing if the parking lot was at the rear of the building. Snow clearing equipment would have great difficulty accessing the area down the narrow lane and moving around in the limited space to clear the snow between the parking area and the adjacent residence yard. And a truck to get the snow hauled away each time would also have very little space to maneuver in and around and out of the limited area. And we will not accept snow piles being left behind the adjacent residential properties that would eventually melt and flood into their backyards and possibly their garage. We haven't seen or heard anything on what their plans are for all the garbage they will have with the staff and 8 rooms of residents and their babies. And we will definitely not accept a big BFI bin meters from our adjacent backyards that will smell and attract rodents to the area and our properties. Also, along with these young mothers, we surmise there may be some disgruntled fathers. Residents around this area are concerned and are wanting to know what safety measures would be in place if and when they do show up to the residents. Everyone in the affected area that received the notice of hearing letter has these objections and concerns, and we ask that our objections and concerns be taken seriously. Thanks. And then they have reference to the zoning bylaw. On the next page, there's a little diagram attached. You might be able to see on the screen. And it was signed by the following residents: Brenda Larkin, Leah Garnham, Steve Costain and Tiffany Starr, Carrie Van Art, Ralph and Ruth Rutledge, Dale and Cheryl Nichols, Ken Morrison, Ron Asham, Kate and Mark Niles, Mike and Heather Jordan, Larry Fletcher, Angie Martin, and Judy Roberts.
Thank you. Mr. Martins, if you wanted to just stand at the podium in case there's questions of you to save time. Okay, now it's the time that council can ask questions. I just thought I would just give a reminder from the letter and what was in it that, remember, we're here for a variation public hearing, not a conditional use public hearing. So what we're talking about is the variances, if that makes sense. So any questions from council? Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Mr. Martins, for showing up. Just a couple of real quick questions. The first question, of course, is what was the reason or the rationale for the delay on why the original variance had expired?
It's, we have to do fundraising. It's not government funded. So we gotta come up with funds to build the building, and if you're doing it that way, you have to basically come up with a lot of funds before you can start. You can't just go make a loan.
Sure. And do you actually have a projected start date?
Yeah, March 25th was our,
Sure.
but where you got other stuff we gotta look into yet or get finished, so it'll be later.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just one follow-up question. Just in regards to some of the concerns, have you met with the residents surrounding the property at all to address some of the concerns that they had?
We did on the last variance because they had some issues, and we met with them, and it was, once they understood what we were doing, it was not a problem. I'm not sure what changed.
And is there anything you want to say directly to these concerns at all that they've put forward at this point in time?
A lot of it I hadn't actually thought about until the first time we got the variance, like the garbage and the snow removal.
Sure.
Um,
And I understand that some of those things obviously is just general housekeeping that every property owner
Yeah,
would be
like
expected to do at this point in time. Do you see any issues at all with any of the concerns that are brought forward? And being able to address them with the neighbors?
no, I believe we should be able to address them. I don't think that should be too much of a, I don't believe it should be too much of an issue.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Anyone else?
Yes, Your Worship.
Councillor
Question.
Nichols?
Thank you. Through Your Worship to Mr. Martin. Is this a one-story or a two-story building?
Councillor Nichols, can you just move your
Sure.
microphone a little closer? Thanks.
Is this a one-story or a two-story building or three, like in terms of the structure?
It's a basement with the main floor, and then we're looking into getting just a suite upstairs, possibly for house parents or,
So it'll be like a two-story above
yeah.
grade type
Because
building?
the rafters were so big already, we figured we might be able to utilize the space up there.
I see. Any consideration into the restricted area on the corner in terms of the part pieces and sightlines and views? Is there any concerns there that you've looked at?
The one thing that had changed from the last variance was that the ramp was put on. So now that, I think, might be what they're worried about, that the ramp might be obstructing the view. So that would be one thing that we could look at, changing how it's sitting or.
Thank you, Your
Yeah.
Worship. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe from the planning district, you could talk about that variance with the corner?
Well, the way it's situated on there, if you were back.
Do you have a microphone? Oh, sorry. Yeah, sorry, Randy. Thank you.
For the corner restricted setback. You gotta push the button. Sorry, Randy.
There you go.
For the corner restricted setback, it's, like if he switched the ramp to go to the other way, you wouldn't be in it at all. Because you're not within that 3 meters either way, right? So if you, but it is only, and you also, the boulevard on the front's approximately, what do I got here? It's approximately 3 meters. Like, you gotta realize these distances are from the property line, not the boulevard, right? So you got the boulevard about 3 meters on the east side and about 5.4 meters off on the north side. So there is quite an area in there, I mean, the city-owned property that you won't be restricting, right? That answers that?
So if I'm looking sort of on this, I'm going to use my technical skills. On the right side of the paper, right?
Yeah.
That right to the edge line of the paper is actually boulevard, isn't it? Because there's about 10 feet there.
Yeah, like it's just 2 meter, all their setbacks are worked off your property lines, not the boulevard, not the curb.
Okay.
So you have an extra 10 feet in there, like, but I mean, the bylaw does reflect the property lines. Then you have an extra 5.4 meters to the north, to the top.
Okay. Is that clear? Councillor Nichols?
Yeah, just one other question. In terms of the parking in the rear of it, is there a standardized length of a parking spot that we need? Like, okay,
Yeah, there is, like, it's within the bylaw. I'm gonna go, because I can't remember what it is in metric, but it's 9 feet wide by 20 feet. So if you had it, and that's what they are, so they have 8 stalls and one in there in the back.
and if I'm reading this correctly, they're like vertically, the vehicles would park east-west, pointing east-west, be behind the building, and we need 20, sorry, how long would we need for the vehicle? Like that parking stall?
We got 7.5 meters setback to the building now, and the parking stalls fit within that depth.
Okay, just though, like in terms of the property?
No,
line
that's
for the-
7.5 meters is roughly 25 feet.
Okay, thank you.
And then you calculate part of your lane as part of that as well, because you can turn in from there.
I see.
Where if you were on the front and you parked on the front, you can only stick with your property line. Now, you can't use the boulevard as part of that access, right? You'd have to reconfigure the way that parking stalls are, and you may have to get a variation for that.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Espy?
Your Worship, you must forgive me. I do not recall when this first came to council. However, I do have some questions about how the parking and all that stuff. We approved that already? The parking stalls?
Yeah, this just came, the change, I believe, is in the parking, is this, and planning can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the jut out there, like of the window, that was the change in the new variation?
And the rear yard, the only change was that little jog out at the back step. It's kind of like a little covered porch area. Originally, it wasn't, it projected, it didn't project out. And then on the front yard, it is the ramp that's changed. The building is still set back that 5 meters on the property line. And then the site coverage is changed because of the new bylaw. It was under multifamily dwelling before, and you were allowed 80% site coverage. Now it's under other uses, and you're only allowed 40%. So that's what the variation, why that one come forth.
So the new actual, if for site coverage is 54%. Anyone else? I have a couple questions, because I do think when we get a letter of concern from 13 different citizens, that we have to be really aware of that. And some of those concerns are about snow removal.
Right.
Because, for instance, those parking spots go up against a back lane, which we do not do snow removal on. And so their concern is in the wintertime, if we have a heavy snow and you're piling up snow, and then, like, for instance, let's say it happened today, and then 3 days from now, we had spring weather, that snow would melt and drain into their backyards, which is a concern. So I just have questions on if you've made a plan for snow removal, because you'll be considered a commercial property in our area.
Well, I figured that we would have to have somebody hired that would do the snow removal for us.
Awesome. Okay, that's good. And then the other question again is, I know it came up too with, if you say you were running at full capacity of the business model that you have, is that you might have a lot of garbage, and what your plan for that would be.
I believe there's garbage pickup once a week. Is that correct?
I think it's mostly not so much the garbage pickup concern as to what the garbage vessel would be. Yeah.
Okay, we were thinking those, just those bins with wheels. We'd have to have a couple of those.
Can you just say that louder in the microphone? Sorry.
We would need a couple of those green bins.
Like the rolling bins?
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Good. Does Councillor Nichols?
Yes, please. One more question. That you alluded to the two-story. At what area of the building would you see that going the two-story high, or is the whole building going to be that height?
The building, I don't believe, changed in height. It was just room in the rafters that we thought we would utilize.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. If there is no more questions, thank you, Mr. Martins. If there's no more questions, I'll ask for a motion to close the public hearing.
Thank you, Worship. Be it resolved, and I so move that the public hearing for a variation PC 7-23, Hope Journeys Home Inc., 687 Tupper Street North, now be closed.
Moved by Councillor Meyer, seconded by Councillor Porter. All those in favor? And that's carried. And we'll move right in, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, Council, again, what you see in front of you, and I just do want to reiterate Madam Mayor's words, it's not a conditional use we're looking at, it's just a variance that we're talking about. And it's really just a reapplication for a variance with a couple additional things that I want to point out here in a second. So the request at this point in time is to vary the following, which is the front yard requirement of 9.1 meters to be reduced down to 2 meters. South side yard requirement of 3 meters to be reduced to 1.5 meters. The north side yard requirement of 3.6 meters to be reduced to 1.7 meters. Site coverage requirement of 40% to be increased to 53.4%. And then the rear yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced down to 7 meters. The background, as we discussed already, is this was approved at one point in time, but it was approved, and sorry, the sketch is there, and the site plan, of course, is there for your reference as well. So this was previously approved, but did expire, as the applicant had indicated. The front yard requirement, and these are the two changes that I wanted to point out from when council originally approved it back, whatever the date that was there, which looks like it was 2021. The front yard requirement has changed from the previous variation, and that, of course, was to accommodate the barrier-free ramp at the front. and the site coverage percentage increase was added to the application reflecting the new bylaw number 218724 requirements. And as Mr. Fraser had indicated, when it was originally done, the requirement was in relationship to, what was that again, sorry, Mr. Fraser?
Multifamily dwelling was under for the site requirements.
Right.
Now it's under other uses.
Right. So that was down from 80%, where now it's 43% or something in the new bylaw.
It's changed it from 80% site coverage for multifamily to other uses is 40%, so now they had to take it up to this requirement to make it fit.
Got it. So of course, it already is in an R3 residential multifamily zone, and the application has been circulated to various city departments. There have been no concerns. Public notices were sent to all property owners as indicated. You had seen the opponents against the variation. With that said, it's the administrative recommendation, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve the variation request of Hope's Journey Homes, Inc. to vary the following. The front yard requirement of 9.1 meters to be reduced to 2.2 meters. South side yard requirement of 3 meters to be reduced down to 1.5. The north side yard requirement of 3.6 meters to be reduced to 1.7. And the site coverage requirement of 40% to be increased to 53.4%. And finally, the rear yard requirement of 7.5 meters to be reduced to 7 meters. At the property known as 687 Tupper Street North, which is legally described as lots 893, 894, 895, Plan 66 in the parish of Portage la Prairie.
Moved by Councillor Meyer, seconded by Councillor Doyle. Any further comments or questions?
Yes, Your Worship. If I may, and I'm not sure exactly what the procedure would be here, but I'm asking that it be looked at or deferred at this point. I got some other questions that I'd like to speak to in terms of planning. The structure, I'm just not getting, I drove by there and I'm not getting a clear picture in terms of height in that corner when you're coming at the corner, from the avenue to Tupper. I'm wondering if we could get a better model of understanding of what that will look like on that site in that corner. I have some concerns with it. So I'm not sure what proper, and of course the question about the snow, if that can be answered or talked to.
No,
That's where I'm at in terms of questions.
I'm afraid the motion was made already, so
That
we,
would be the time to.
yeah, we'd have to vote on the motion. Unless we amend the motion.
Yeah, I was just going to suggest that,
Put
Your
forward
Worship, that another motion come forward amending the motion to deferral. And my only commentary on that would be, I would like to see, given past experience, a lot more detail on the site plan. I'd like to see it laid out with the streets included. I would like to see the frontage and side views of this building. And I would also like to review the regulations and bylaws for R3 dwellings as far as snow and garbage removal are concerned.
Just give me a second. Can we do?
I'm sorry, I'm confused, Your Worship. Are we making a motion?
Oh, I'm trying to figure out what the legal. Where's Nathan?
Yeah, pretty much.
Motion was made. It was. But not voted on. To defer. Is that well, we're gonna hope for the best. So. So the first motion that we are voting on is the amendment, okay? So the motion is to defer.
To the next council meeting is what you're suggesting? That this matter be deferred to the March 27th meeting of council.
Moved by Councillor,
I so move that we defer this until the next meeting date of March,
27th.
27th.
seconded by Councillor Espy. All those in favor?
Can I
Oh, yeah.
speak to that? Thank you. I would really like council just to really reconsider this for a minute. Everything that my respected colleague, Councillor Espy had discussed there is already within the minimum site requirements. The building height can only be 9.1 meters. If they were to change the plan or the design, they would have to come back to council anyways. This one was originally approved back a year ago on exactly the same basis. A couple of things I want us to point out, if we can deal with the business tonight, would be okay. I don't think we can tell them about snow garbage or snow clearing. I don't think we can tell them about garbage clearing. I think it already falls within the current bylaws. They have to maintain the current bylaws. There's nothing council can do or suggest differently unless we're going to change a bylaw. Secondly, we do have another, let's call it maybe an inappropriate term, but let's call it a shelter at this point in time. The way I look at it, we already have a shelter in exactly the same situation in an R3 residential area on the south side of obviously I won't tell you the address, but on the south side that follows almost identical pattern. If you've gone to the site, you can see the building development that they propose. Trusting that they stay to that, it fits exactly what the development agreement and development area is. There's many businesses and so on around that area and many residential that are responsible for snow clearing. So we can't tell them that they have to have something in place. The bylaw already indicates that they have to have it in place. We can't tell them about garbage pickup because the bylaw already indicates they have to have that in place. Then they would be in violation of a bylaw. I see completely no reason to defer this. It's something that was approved before, so really the only additions that we were talking about was whether or not we were going to change the front yard requirement, and which I think I was satisfied in the action of the ramp for the corner site, and we've got the extra space for that. And as I say, it is already in an R3 residential multifamily zone. So I would certainly vote against that that amendment and would like to deal with the business tonight. But that's just me. Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Espy.
Councillor Meyer makes very valid points. The one thing that I am cautious about that does fit into this is because we are doing so many variations and understanding that we have approved this at one point before, I want to see exactly what's being built there before I say yes to all these variations. And that means different views of this building from different angles.
Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. We don't actually have the responsibility of development agreement. It's not up to us to tell them what they can and can't build in that area as long as it fits within the development agreement and the current bylaws the way that we have it right now. If they decide that they want to change the building structure on it and stay within the current variants that they have that right and opportunity. And there's nothing that council can decide differently against that. It's not where we're selling the land with the development agreement.
Councillor Espy.
With all due respect to Mr. Meyer, I do agree with him. However, we have been in a situation before where we've made these decisions based on a footprint of a building, and it has come back to haunt us at a later date. So I would still like to see what this looks like.
Through to Mr. Fraser, have you seen a plan of the building?
Yeah, we have seen plans. They're not issued for construction, yeah, but we have seen some, yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, so we are voting on the amendment for the deferral. All those in favor? Against? And that is carried. To defer.
Okay, I missed the count.
That's what I see. So then the first one is, we don't have to vote on the first one, correct?
We've still got a motion and a second on this.
Oh, so then,
You have to vote on the original motion as amended.
so so now we're going to vote on the original motion as amended, which means the motion for the variance to be deferred as a whole.
If I understand it correctly.
Correct. All those in favor?
Should be the same vote? Yeah. Same. In favor.
And against? That is carried.
The deferral was.
Thank you, everyone, for your patience. We'll find out if we're right or wrong when,
And that is the end of the public hearing. Thank you, my report.
So let's just, so we know what we're looking for when we come back, that to make everyone's life easier is a plan for what is going to be on the site, if possible. Councillors, yeah, what you're exactly looking for is. Yeah, Councillor Espy?
Thank you, Worship. I would like to see a more detailed plan. As far as all the other concerns, that will be on us to do our research.
Yes, sorry, Your Worship, I would like to see like a plan view too in terms of where this building, what it'll look like on that corner. I'm concerned about that. And in terms of heights, like a plan view, and keeping in mind also that we do have a basement under it, what that does in terms of heights and elevations.
Okay. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you
Your
on
Worship.
the next meeting. Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on into Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Your Worship. Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee has no report at this time.
Thank you. City Planning and Economic Development Committee, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. City Planning Economic Development Committee has nothing more to say.
Thank you. Community Services Committee, Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Worship. The Community Services Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. And Waterworks Committee, Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Your Worship. What I have today is, the issue is that I have a report to council. The issue is to accept the 2022 land application for biosolids reports. We alluded to this in the last meeting that it would come up through committee. The analysis is a detailed report. There is one attached to it summarizing the annual land application of biosolids program. It's required to be submitted to Manitoba Conservation and Climate as specified in License 1907R. The attached report includes all the relevant information, including soil conditions of the land in which the biosolids were applied, properties of the biosolid material from both the biosolid storage tanks and the low-rate anaerobic reactor. I think I said that wrong. Thank you. As well as application rates for nutrients and metals to ensure compliance with the license. The 2022 land application of biosolids program was successful with 603 dry tons of material injected into farmland within the RM of Portage la Prairie. Delays in receiving the results from the external lab initially caused some concerns with the level of organic nitrogen being applied. However, adjustments to the application rates were made to bring the application process well within the license parameters and the overall applied concentration for the field section of 160 kilograms per hectare compared to the limit of 100 kilograms per hectare. Parameters such as metal, solids, and phosphorus were within license limits. There were no spills or no concerns with the transportation to report. So the administration recommendation, and I so move that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie accept the Wastewater Treatment Division 2022 land application of biosolids report as presented and authorize the submission to Manitoba Conservation and Climate as well as the posting and as well as the posting of the report to the city's website. So
And that
moved.
is moved by Councillor Nichols, seconded by Councillor Porter. Any questions, comments? All those in favor? That's carried.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Transportation Committee, Councillor Porter.
Thank you, Your Worship. Transportation Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Your Worship. Public Safety Committee has nothing to report.
Thank you. We have no deferred business. We will move into new business. We have the January building reports. City Planning and Economic Development, Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. We laugh only because it's the most exciting time that I've had when I've been on council in the 5 years that I'm around. There's nothing that gets me more excited when I see economic development going on within our region. And this, of course, is the proof as I get to so excitedly talk about every single month. As always, we get both reports for the city and for the RM, but of course, I always draw your attention to the combined totals as we do look at it from a regional perspective. So the report, quite simply, it's only for the month of January, but it's already an exciting start. We know we had a couple of 3 years of some exceptional record-breaking permits and dollar values as well. We know this year we're not maybe looking exactly at that, but who knows, things can change. But as it stands right now, year over year from 2023 to 2022, there have been actually no new builds, but you are going to see that there's a significant increase in repairs. So what that does is obviously tells you that people are reinvesting back into their homes, and it's only in successful cities where that begins to happen. Significant repair in commercial, again, which tells you that people are investing money back into their commercial enterprises as well. You'll also note down on the bottom that there's significant increase in RTMs. We talked a little bit about that being a cottage industry, and we know that that's going to keep on going. So last year at this time, we had 13 permits. This year, we're over by 3 up to 16, and the limit's gone from 609 almost to 1.3 million. So it's already a great start. I'm excited about looking for February's, which I know will come out here soon, and I know there's lots of action going on. And I really want to thank the planning district and, of course, everybody involved in that for the excellent work we're getting to it at this point. So unless there's any further questions, and I could talk about it for an hour, kidding. If there's any further questions, that would be the end of my report.
Thank you. New business, the water treatment plant expansion grant, Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Your Worship. Some exciting news in terms of the grant that's been, the province announced some time ago in terms of $35 million, that there's a grant on the table for us to look at and move forward with looking at the expansion of our water treatment plant. So this is very exciting news. Some of the stuff that we do have to move on and move forward in order to accept this grant is to move here tonight that we look forward to moving forward in terms of design and an agreement to go ahead and fund 50% of this water treatment plant. So in concept, what we're doing here, I'll give you some background. The city's water treatment plant currently, and this is just some background for numbers and understanding the position we're in now, and gives you the right of way to understand in terms of how loaded we are right now. And then, you know, what the upgrade to the expansion and what it'll do to us in terms of providing some redundancy for the plant so that there's room for growth and there's room for service and maintenance and what have you, so we're not shutting down big clients when we do have the need for maintenance. So I'm going to give you some numbers and some understanding around that. If you got any questions about it, please let me know. The city's water treatment plant current output is approximately 23 to 25 million liters per day, which is known as MLD, and I'll refer to that as we go through, which is well over the plant's firm capacity of 17 MLD. Continuing operating at this volume does not allow the plant to shut down parts of its operation, example, clarifiers for routine and capital maintenance, nor does it meet daily demands should something break. There are also regular inquiries for water, and current treatment plant has no available capacity for somewhat for current or future units of any significant size. The functional design report was recently completed. The report identified a 38 MLD plant expansion with a dual membrane process that would be suitable for the city. The expansion would increase the plant's firm capacity to 45 MLD, and that gives you an idea in the concept of the numbers of what we'd have room for. And it would increase to 72 if we run and combine those pieces together. Not only would this allow for preventative maintenance on existing equipment, but it was also improved water quality, as the finished water would be softened and contain less organics, which create potentially, it's just a better overall product is the way I'll word that. To reduce the control, it also reduced corrosion potential in the finished water, and which is always a good thing in terms of our distribution system. There's also some capacity built into this design based on growth projections. So what we're doing here tonight and we're talking about and very excited about is that the way that this breaks out is the Manitoba Water Services Board has confirmed the province of Manitoba has allocated funding for this project through the Municipal Relations Strategic Infrastructure Basket for both technical and financial assistance to complete the upgrade and expansion. The province is prepared to fund 50% of the detailed design work, that gives us the first piece, understanding what it is that we need, how we get it, and the detailed design to build that. And that estimated cost is at $3 million, as well as up to 50% of the capital cost, which is estimated at $77 million. In total, each party will be responsible for up to $40 million. The city has set aside $1.5 million. It's allocated in the 23 financial plan for their share of the detailed design costs. To fund the construction capital, the city would need to issue a debenture of $38.5 million. So as we go through that part, that's what we need to understand that we need to move forward here today. And they're asking that the grant be accepted. The city, in order to accept it, the city must pass the resolution prior to March 31st, asking the Manitoba Water Services Board for assistance with the technical and financial support for both the detailed design as well as the construction capital. So, on behalf, and the administrative recommendation is that, and I so move that the Council of the City of Portage la Prairie approve requesting technical and financial assistance from the Manitoba Water Services Board for the completion of the water treatment plant expansion, including up to $3 million for detailed design and up to $77 million for construction capital to be shared 50% between the province of Manitoba and the City of Portage la Prairie. I so move, Your Worship.
Moved by Councillor Nichols, seconded by Councillor Porter. Any questions or comments? I just have a comment because I think moving forward with this is very good news. And maybe I would just ask our economic development, Ms. O'Leary here, because we talk about Portage being wet industry, right? And we are looking for investment attraction. If we were to move forward with this project and you being able to say to potential investors that water is not going to be a problem, how much is another box to tick for you?
Thank you, Your Worship. I would say that yes, we have had a heightened inquiry for wet industry in this region. I would never recommend to council on something as technical as this and maybe refer it back to the Director of Utilities. Just we could say we have enough water, but I wouldn't feel comfortable speaking to that.
Sure.
And I'm going to give another generic answer. So when we redid this design through the summer of 2022, there were some, I'm going to say, loosely known asks from current users as well as potentials. Some of those have been considered in this. Others are not far enough along to really delve into it, but there is some capacity built in for those potentials as well as some unknown users. However, how we move forward and what the overall capacity that we move is what we'll figure out in the next year during detailed design, and hopefully have a better understanding of what we're able to service for now, but also into the future.
Perfect. Thank you.
I just have one quick.
Councillor Meyer?
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess just to be clear, we're not voting on the $77 million project. We're only voting on the ability to approve the requesting of the technical and financial assistance, if I'm correct on that, from the Manitoba Water Services Board. So just want to be careful that we're not putting anything at risk at this point in time. So I just wanted to be clear on what I was voting on.
You're right. No, not at risk.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions? All those in favor?
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. It's all right. Councillor Doyle.
Sorry, I do just have a quick question, just to piggyback on to Councillor Meyer's question. The 40 cubic meters would see their quarterly bill, users' quarterly bill increase by $33.60. Is that based on another vote, or is that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We're far away from that.
Okay. Thank you.
Far away. Yeah. What we're voting on today pretty much is saying, yay, let's try and move forward and get a design and
That's right.
go with that. Yeah. Yeah. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Another item of new business under Water Services Board project priority list. Again, Waterworks Committee, Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Your Worship. What we have here, the issue that I'm going to report to council and look for a resolution is to submit utility projects, and there's been some great work done here in terms of prioritizing priority projects for Manitoba Water Services Board for the consideration in their 24 to 29 project funding plan. So our great folks here have done, they've reached into what they did, what they feel, what they need, what they see coming forward in terms of this, and they itemized 10 which are attached in these projects that they find that are critical or top 10. Manitoba Water Service Board is a provincial agency that assists municipalities with development of water and wastewater infrastructure through funding programs. Each year, the MWSB accepts applications from municipalities for projects with the then used to establish a capital funding plan for the next 5 years. The secondary purpose is to ensure the government of Manitoba understands the water and wastewater infrastructure needs throughout the province, so it gives them a real good grasp of what it is that we're needing out there. For the 24-29 plan, municipalities are to submit their top 10 priorities by March 31st, 2023 for consideration. Projects that's funded through MWSB are cost shared at 50%. So our administration has moved forward with 10 here that are itemized, and there's projected cost with them, which is a great venture. And I so move, and it's administrative recommendation that the Council of City of Portage la Prairie authorize the administration to submit the 10 priority utility projects as indicated in this report to the Manitoba Water Services Board for the 24-29 funding for considerations.
Moved by Councillor Nichols, seconded by Councillor Porter. Is there any comments or questions on those? Councillor Massey?
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know, maybe Councillor Nichols or administration can give me a little more on these 10 projects. I know the Water Services Board has a prioritizing system of dealing with projects. Environmental concerns and so on are really top of the... Are these... Can you give me a little flavor? Are these for economic development more, or is it these are just things you got to get done? Like, did you look at different criteria for these projects? I know we looked at our capital plan for 10 years, and we've got a lot of stuff on our books to do. But just give me a little bit more. And second question is, what the financial piece? These are all $50. Is that sort of started to be looked at if we do get approval for some of these? I know the Water Services Board sometimes acts pretty quick, and boom, you got to sort of have your ducks in order. So just give me a little bit more on those two issues, please.
Sure, if you don't mind, Joss. Okay. Yeah, just through your worship, the first 4 items on the list, and maybe a little others, those have all come about through a capacity and condition assessment study that we're in the process of finalizing. And those were the ones the areas that have been identified as having limited capacity in terms of economic, sorry, this doesn't want to stay, residential and industrial growth. So specifically the Joel and Force Main, that services all of Sisson's area, so the mall, everything kind of in the western section of the city. From there, the McMillan Industrial Park, we would like to separate the high-strength wastewater from the residential, which frees up capacity in the industrial system. And as well, some of the lift stations then from that report have then been identified as the next point in the bottleneck. So that's where a lot of our priorities came from, is from that report, as well as aging infrastructure and the generators being kind of our points of weakness should there be power failures. The cost sharing, these are our estimated costs at 100%. So yeah, Water Services Board does fund up to 50% of these. We do have, most of these are in our 10-year plan, maybe not in the year that Water Services would identify it, but at that point we would be able to reorganize our priorities based on what they would do. But again, they wouldn't move forward with funding a project without the city having our 50% to commit to as well. Is there any follow-up?
Thinking. Just one other one, yeah, no, and I know some of these projects, we talked about them in, you know, our budget and like going forward and be able to do some of these. But I'm just, yeah, just looking at the priority. So a lot of them basically are kind of priorities that we need to get done. And they're not, you know, kind of, oh, if we got this, like the last issue we talked about was could be an economic development driver, but these are, you know, they're getting old and you need to, so just want to make sure these priorities, like we get approval for some of these over the next 5 years, you know, we'll have to, I'm sure you and Jen will have to do a lot of talking on the financial side of these as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of these are kind of new to our infrastructure plan, but again, with where they're located and the potential growth in those areas, I think that they definitely are worth looking at in terms of priority with or without Water Services Board funding. This would be a bonus.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Just for knowledge, this Bridge Road lift station generator, is that the last one in our plan from after the storm?
Yeah, we've already installed 2 generators at 2 of our other major lift stations. I would say this would be the next priority one. We have 13 lift stations. Most of them we can service with portable units, but after Bridge Road, there's potentially 1 or 2 others that would be a nice to have. But in terms of critical or more important, Bridge Road would be the last one.
Thank you. All those in favor? And that's carried. There's no old business, so we'll adjourn council at 6:51 p.m. and we will move right into committee. We'll call committee to order at 6:51 p.m. We'll move right into Finance, Legislative, and Property Committee. Councillor Massey.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is the report you've all been waiting for. The issue here is for you to read this. This will be brought forward at the next council meeting. It's the looking at our audit plan for the past year. We've engaged BDO as our external auditors to provide the audit processes to review the city's financial processes and prepare the year-end audit for council. One interesting note on this is that there's been a change in the way audits are done for municipalities. You'll see there's a risk assessment being done that's going to cost us $9,100. I think this is really important, especially for our new council. This is going to be looking at our control procedures as a city. Do we have the right checks and balances? Are we at risk at all in terms of our finances? And I think that's one of the things that I think will be really worked on by the auditors. There's an extra fee for that, but it'll give council a good idea, you know, how good a shape we are in terms of our finances and the controls we have. So it's in there for your information at this time, and we have to have a council resolution at the next council meeting to approve this plan. So please review it, and it'll be brought forward at the next council meeting. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Massey. I can say being my 5th year here, that I think it seems because of the climate we're in, especially with cybersecurity, et cetera, is that it seems every year we've had something new that finance has put in place. So hopefully we'll see we're already doing a great job.
Yes, for sure.
We'll move into City Planning and Economic Development Committee. Councillor Meyer.
Thank you, Your Worship. City Planning Economic Development Committee has nothing in committee tonight.
Thank you. And Community Services Committee. Councillor Espy.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have a presentation from Tamarack Institute and Southern Health. So I'd like to welcome Maureen Owens and Jeremy Brooks.
Thank you. Just to be aware that just because you are live on YouTube, that you want to make sure you're using the microphone as much as possible.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for having us this evening. Before we get going, we'll do our own land acknowledgement. So I want to recognize that we gather on Indigenous land, and we are grateful we can meet. Thank you to the Indigenous people that cared for and still care for this land. As settlers, it is our job to learn the history, the promise, and the challenges of the Truth and Reconciliation Calls to Action. My name is Maureen Owens, and I work with the Tamarack Institute, Communities Ending Poverty Division. I've lived in Portage for 17 years, and I've been with the Tamarack Institute for about a year now. Prior to that, I worked for Southern Health in the Public Health Department with Jeremy in the Healthy Living Division. So thank you for making time for us, and I'll turn it over to Jeremy to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for having me here today. My name is Jeremy Brooks, and I'm a healthy living facilitator with Southern Health Santé Sud. So we work out of the Public Health Department. And the next one? Yes. So that's just a little bit of an agenda about what we're going to be speaking today. So we're here to talk about poverty today. So I have some statistics to kind of share with you, but I know a few of you are familiar to me, but I'd like to just take a little bit of a moment to explain my role and what we do as healthy living facilitators. So like I said, we work out of the Public Health Department. So there are 9 healthy living facilitators spread across our health region. So really what we do is we look at community initiatives that can help improve the health outcomes of people within community. So historically, this typically centered around individualistic behavior change, things like smoking cessation, physical activity promotion, nutrition counseling, those types of things. But we've really had a shift more towards community-centered approaches that are equity-focused and a lot more upstream. So that infographic there might look familiar to all of you. It's kind of psychology 101 with behavior change. And really what we're getting at with this infographic or with this picture here is that in order for a person to really consider some of those aspects higher up on the pyramid, they really need to have their basic needs met. So talking about poverty, that's really one of the things that we're trying to focus on here today. So next slide there. So yeah, as a healthy living facilitator, really what we do is we focus on the social determinants of health. So Southern Health as an organization recognizes that a large portion of a person's health is actually impacted by factors outside of the healthcare system. So this is kind of an illustration that really showcases what some of those factors are. And as you can see, poverty really hits home with a lot of the ones in the 50% your life, and it even touches on some of the ones in the environment and your healthcare as well. Typically what we try and do is we look for a primary prevention approach, which is really what we're looking at is trying to prevent problems before they arise. So the way that we healthy living facilitators do this work is by empowering local organizations that are working towards initiatives that positively contribute to a person's overall health. So since last March, we've been able to, as an organization, provide over $25,000 in direct funding to organizations within Portage to try and get some pilot projects going to overall improve a person's health. Other things that we do is we're involved in a lot of advocacy at the provincial level. We get tapped on the shoulder for different working committees and working groups to give our perspective about the things that are happening in communities and the types of issues that organizations face, especially the nonprofit sector. Other things that we do are sitting on a variety of committees. There's about a dozen committees that I sit on within Portage. We do I help out in every way possible, from event planning for the Portage Active Transportation Committee to looking to secure finances for a capital infrastructure project. So it varies, and really it's about meeting communities where they're at and doing what we can to help out. Another example of that is by providing letters of support. Most recently was with the Food Security Fund, which helped bring in over $75,000 for Salvation Army and $47,000 for PCRC. So next slide. So as Southern Health as an organization, every 4 years we publish a document called the Community Health Assessment. So I pulled out a few stats from the Community Health Assessment that I wanted to point out today to just illustrate the current scenario with poverty in Portage. So most notably, there's going to be the median household income right there. So right away, it's easy to see that Portage is quite a bit lower than the rest of the province and the rest of the health region. Another kind of standout figure is the percent of households that live in low income. So in this instance, low income is defined as 50% of the Canadian median. And in 2019, when this report was developed, the Canadian median income was $66,000. So essentially, this is saying that 1 in 5 households in Portage live off of less than $33,000 a year. It becomes even more staggering when you see the percent of children that are included in that. I come from a family of teachers, and they see this quite often. So I just challenge anybody in the room, next time you're talking to a teacher, ask them their view of poverty and what they see within the school divisions. And they'll be able to give you quite a few examples. So next slide.
Okay, so Jeremy painted the picture of poverty in Portage. He listed a bunch of social determinants of health and correlated most of those, if not all of them, to poverty. When poverty is prevalent in a community, you end up with a surviving society instead of a thriving society. Poverty affects health, well-being, safety, and the vibrancy of a community. It is the underlying root cause of so many of our social issues. Crime, addiction, affects the justice system, the health system, our education system. Children living in poverty get left behind. And then there's the legacy of the residential schools among that as well. So we're here today to talk about social sustainability in relation to civic function. Most local governments have similar overarching visions. They want their communities to be healthy, vibrant, and safe, where all citizens have an opportunity to thrive. A safe, healthy, prosperous community is one that attracts individuals and families to live and work in Portage la Prairie, and industry to invest here. The effects of poverty and the related symptoms really undermine the health, safety, and prosperity of the community that you govern. Solutions to poverty are very complex, they're overwhelming, and they require a multi-sectoral approach, and there's no real other way to tackle that. The social services agencies in our communities simply do not have the capacity to tackle poverty alone. They don't have necessary leadership, the connections to funding, connections to other levels of government, and to the business communities. So the agencies in our community, they're emerging from the pandemic. They're trying to keep people's heads above water, and often their resources are used to meet immediate and short-term services such as food security, transportation, helping out kids, providing winter coats, those kind of like crisis in the moment needs. But we want to talk today about what Jeremy mentioned, the upstream system change work. So I mentioned multi-sectoral. Local governments are a key player in this, and they find themselves with an incredible opportunity. Why is that? They have a community-wide mandate, and they provide the bird's eye view of their community. They're closest to the people and the businesses in the community. They have the leadership. Local governments have a say on critical issues such as affordable housing, rental bylaws, transportation, access to leisure and cultural programs. All of these things can impact individuals, organizations, and the whole community. You can create and nurture spaces and networks and contribute to building capacity in our community. When the entire community is taken into consideration, local governments have an important role. Next slide, please.
Yeah, so there's a lot of initiatives that are currently happening within Portage. There's a lot of nonprofit organizations that are focusing on many of the different aspects of poverty. Those are just a few of the initiatives. There's definitely more going on within town. And no matter what committee, what board I'm sitting on, those three issues seem to be the top ones that come up. Food security, transportation is always a big one, and affordable housing. those organizations do tremendous work. And the biggest thing that I think would be missing would be some collaboration, further collaboration among those organizations. It's very difficult to find time to get everybody to sit down. And the best thing that we could do is find ways to support those initiatives. There's a lot of good initiatives. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. I think we just need to try and find different ways that we can support those initiatives that are already happening within our community.
Next slide. So the Tamarack Institute, so our goals, we're a national, actually international company or organization. We have a few communities that we service in the United States. Our two big goals were to first establish a learning center. So this provides the research, the documents, the case stories, the best practice, and effective applications for community. And then the second goal was to apply what we learned and to work with communities to reduce and sustain Canada's national poverty rate at less than 5%. So that's what we do at the Tamarack Institute. We have 20 years of research, partnering with universities, experts. We've built case studies, tools, frameworks, and we work with communities to help tackle some of these social concerns. There's also the strength of our network as well. So we represent about 400 municipalities across Canada, over 90 poverty roundtables. And you can learn from all these other communities. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. And we scale up and amplify success so that no matter where you are on your journey, you can learn from some of the other communities. And I'll just share an example. So Winnipeg is one of our members, and in 2015, the Winnipeg Poverty Reduction Council, which is an initiative of United Way, they took a multi-sectoral approach, and they reflected within their group on the skills and the network, and they decided where they could have the greatest impact on community. They were guided by the Truth and Reconciliation call to action number 92, which, if you don't know, it's about making sure that Indigenous people have access to jobs, training, education in the business sector. So what they decided to do was focus on bridging relationships between nonprofits, Indigenous people, and job trainers and businesses to increase employment. So they prioritized 3 items. Actually, they flipped the script. So instead of trying to get Indigenous youth to fit into existing businesses, they focused their efforts on making the system change with the companies themselves. So they partnered with 30 different businesses, and they started by educating corporate management on Indigenous history and its legacy. They then supported the corporate management to educate their employees. So this created an anti-racism and culturally safe practice. And then they facilitated the connections between those employers and Indigenous job seekers. So they brought them together, they used job trainers and supported those Indigenous youth once they had their jobs, because it actually takes support and money to have a job. You need clothing, you need transportation, you maybe need a cell phone. And they saw real change. So some of those businesses adopted human resource practice or policy to support Indigenous engagement. And they increased Indigenous candidates applying for jobs. So I won't get into the stats, but Tamarack's role in that was to support them. So we helped provide the framework for them to do that work. We mapped out the system to gain an understanding of the dynamics that hold that challenge in place, where there's a labor shortage and you have Indigenous youth that aren't employed. So that's an example of some of the projects that we help communities support. Next slide. We see ourselves as a field catalyst. We target working poverty, so people that are working but are still living in poverty and not making the cut. We tackle deep poverty, so those folks on that are homeless or on social income assistance. and we tackle Indigenous poverty. We engage individuals with lived and living experience at all stages of the work, and we leverage the assets of communities. So we're not coming into a community to say, well, you should do this, this, and this. We're working with the community. Communities know their people the best. They know the issues, and so we're there to support you. We embed a collective impact principle, which is really just another name for multi-sectoral. So we want to help bring a variety of work to the table and help to drive long-term change. We'll help with the evaluation and learning at every step. And throughout it all, we'll embed equity, anti-racism, diversity, and inclusion in all of the work. Next slide, please. How do we do that? We can provide coaching and one-on-one manager of communities support. So that's my role as a manager of community. I would help support this community. We have communities of practice. I mentioned that you have peer learning, so you're learning from the other communities in Canada. We do websites, webinars, blogs, newsletters. We have face-to-face and virtual events, and we produce case studies, tools, guides, and articles. So again, we're providing these educational and learning opportunities to support your work. Next slide, please. It's really small, but I just wanted to show you the communities that we work in. So big concentration in the West. You can see in Ontario, we have a number of communities. In Manitoba, there's only 2 there, but we have 3. We have Brandon, Winnipeg, and Carmen. Manitoba just recently signed on with us. Next slide. Okay,
Yeah, so moving forward, I think from my perspective within Southern Health, the Public Health, Healthy Living Department, we're very well connected to other communities across Manitoba. So in Carmen, for example, one of the initiatives that their group is currently working on is they're doing a needs assessment survey to find out the actual minimum livable wage for Carmen. So through that process, they'll identify some of the factors that are bringing that number up. And then that number would allow them to do advocacy within their local chamber. So that's kind of another example of things that can be done. So from my perspective, I think that you guys could use me as a resource. So I'm connected to all those communities across Southern Health. We're connected to the U of M through research with the most recent policy and program evaluations. And if you guys are ever getting requests for funding and those sorts of things, if you're ever looking at any policy or program implementation that has any impact on community members' health, feel free to tap me on the shoulder, ask me what I can find, if there's any research on that program or that policy, and I'll do my best to write some sort of a report for you guys to take into consideration as you move forward.
okay. And for us, or for Tamarack, you would get manager of community support from myself and our directors. We do one-on-one coaching and consulting as well. A membership for the first year with Tamarack is $500. And then the other thing that's needed is an agency to be the backbone support. So kind of the infrastructure, a place to meet, people to convene that multi-sector group and kind of hold the work up and accountable. Next slide, please. Yeah, we'll just break for any questions if anyone has anything they want to ask.
I have lots, you bet. Yeah. I mostly don't have questions, but I'm not sure if you're aware that we are one of 12 communities in Manitoba that have been chosen to do a community safety and well-being plan, and which will hopefully be starting next month, where the province is providing a consultant, and we are one of the first communities that are on the top of the list to start it. It's 6 communities and 6 Indigenous communities, so our closest, and I don't know if they fall in Southern, is Sandy Bay. Is that Southern Health too? So, right, those are two communities that fall under this. But one thing that really, I mean, I know you guys well, but that really hits home in one thing that we talked about in this council with our community safety and well-being plan is that we've made a decision that we as council and the city are leading it. We are not pushing it down to another agency or organization because, like you said, upstream and, you know, we know what those play. We know we want to be the leader in it, and I think you guys and your resources fit right into, and I don't know what it looks like yet, so I can't tell you that, but I think you guys are going to be a great resource in that process because poverty, community safety, and well-being all fit together for sure. Yeah, so I want to thank you for this. I knew a lot of what Jeremy did, but I didn't know, Maureen, exactly what your new role was. So, and tell me too, am I wrong in, is Tamarack like privately funded or?
We do have like anonymous donors.
Yeah.
So we have a huge anonymous donor that funds all of our work in the West, actually. But we're funded by this SDC, social, I can't remember what some government funding.
Okay.
And then we get grants from the McConnell Foundation, TD Bank. So TD Bank is funding a bunch of work with us to work on bankability for people that are living in poverty, to help decrease some of the barriers that they face in getting a bank account and working in a financial institution. So we have different projects that are funded by different pieces. But yeah, we do have. Yeah. And you may have heard of the Tamarack Institute with the work that they're already doing with PCRC.
Right.
So that's another division of Tamarack. Communities Building Youth Futures, so they're focused on youth. And whereas the division I'm working in is focused on poverty. So similar type of work. And in fact, James and Morag are going to be presenting at our national summit in April. So I'm really excited for all of Canada to hear that story. I think it's an amazing project, the roving campus. So yeah,
it's awesome.
And so the same thing happened in Ontario with their community health and safety wellness projects, and we work with a lot of Ontario communities with those plans, so we'll be able to draw on some of their work and scale that up to you guys.
So the piece of the community safety is the multi-sectoral approach, and it really does involve not just our social services agencies, but our business community, et cetera. So I think it's a great start, and as long as you guys are willing to have us reach out.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Yeah.
Councillor Porter?
Yeah, just wanted to add that it's great to know that you guys have already done the work.
Yeah,
So
it helps, right?
it
Like
helps
some of the
us.
frameworks are
Yeah.
there. You're not starting from
For sure.
ground zero. You have tools. Yeah.
It's wonderful. Thank you.
Was there any other questions?
Any other questions? Councillor Massey?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you for your presentation. Just want to make sure I understand. Your ask is that we get a membership in Tamarack?
It's up to you. We have a lot of free resources on our website, and I'll follow up with an email, which will give the website and some of the other resources. So we do have a lot of free resources, but if you wanted some of the coaching and like the manager of city support from myself, the tools, like the case studies that we have, that would require a membership. So
We'll take that back, yeah. Councillor Massey?
My other question is, and I don't know the answer, so we have 137 municipalities, and you've got 3 belonging to Tamarack. Have you gone to the others? Are you, like, you've got the biggies, Winnipeg and Brandon, obviously, and Carmen, interesting, but can you give a little narrative about what are you going to other municipalities? What are they saying to you? I mean, there's poverty in many of them.
yeah.
Can you just expand on that and maybe why more municipalities are not members?
Yeah, I actually haven't. I've only been in this role for a year, and so I haven't. I know that Tamarack's plan is to expand in the prairies. We do have Regina and Saskatoon as well. You know, that would be something that Jeremy and I would work together. He's on the boots in the ground in those communities, so he and I would work on attracting more municipalities. I think Steinbach is looking at coming to our summit for strength. That's the national gathering that I spoke of, and we like to go to that summit. It costs $700 to register and take part. It's a 3-day. Actually, if you switch slides, I'll talk a little bit about that.
Can I just point, just one
Yeah.
quick thing? There was no one in this position before you.
Right.
Right, so she didn't replace somebody in Tamarack, so maybe that's why the uptake is a little,
Yeah.
yeah.
And like it's different in different provinces. So we have a big concentration in BC. The BC provincial government funded communities and mandated them to have poverty reduction plans, and that isn't the case everywhere. So Manitoba might be a little bit back in terms of that kind of funding. Same with Ontario. The community safety and well-being plans were mandated. You know, it's just coming here. So yeah, we're really hoping to scale up and get more communities for sure.
More question.
Yeah.
So, just so I understand, Jeremy, you work for the province.
Yeah.
Okay. And you work for Tamarack.
Yeah.
So, is part of your services, like one of the things I think is when you're navigating a lot of this stuff, is knowing where to go in the provincial system or the federal system for grants or different things. Is that part of what you would offer us? Like, not that we don't have people and staff that know some of this, but you know, you're part of the system, and
Yeah.
some of these issues are federal and provincial in nature, of course, that, you know, that require support for the municipalities.
From
What-
our point of view, we have lots of contacts within the provincial federal system. So there's the National Advisory Committee, which is a federal poverty committee. We have lots of contacts with those levels, and we use that as a lever. So right now, the Tamarack Institute is actually moving into a policy and advocacy role where we're convening a group of members. So if you were a member, let's say you bought a membership, we're convening a group of members from across Canada to sit on an advisory committee and do advocacy work to the province and the feds. So that's some of the work that we do. And maybe Jeremy has something to add.
Yeah, and within Southern Health, we play a supportive role when it comes to grants and those sort of things. So we help organizations actually apply, we write letters of support, we try and build capacity within those organizations. And I know that when it comes to Southern Manitoba, aside from kind of Steinbach, Carmen, Morden, Winkler, and Portage, some of the smaller communities, when it comes to organizations like this, they're not quite there yet. And a lot of what our role plays in those smaller communities is really getting them set up with nonprofits and set up structurally so that they can begin to start to pursue opportunities like this. So yeah, that's kind of probably another reason why there's really only 3 organizations that have signed on to Tamarack so far.
Anything else? I'll just say thank you, and I appreciate you using Southern Health numbers for our population of 15,900 rather than census numbers. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for that, and we'll as council talk about these things and be back in touch.
Thank you. And I'll leave a few copies. So this is a guide that we just wrote this year, and it's 10 ways local government can propel positive social change. So I'll leave it, and then you'll have an idea of some of the work that we do and how we can support local governments in their plans. So thank you so much for having us. We really appreciate the time tonight, and yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for listening to us and taking the time tonight, Eric.
Thank you. Great. Councillor Espy, is that the end?
That concludes my report, Your Worship.
Thank you. Waterworks Committee, Councillor Nichols.
Thank you, Your Worship. What I have in front for presentation today, so you can have a look at it for the next meeting, and it's a report to council, to the Waterworks Committee from administration, and basically we'll be looking for the acceptance, or after you have a run through it and have a look. There's a lot of good information there for the 2022 public water system annual report and the 22 water treatment plant data report. So that'll be for next council meeting, but you can have a look at the packages there, please. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Transportation Committee, Councillor Porter.
Transportation has nothing to report at your time, Your Worship.
Thank you. Public Safety Committee, Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just have a late addition here, just some information from the Public Safety Committee. If anybody has been paying attention to local media in the last 2 weeks, you'll see that Inspector Peddle over at the Portage la Prairie RCMP detachment and his team there have put together 10 tips in 10 days for crime prevention. And now 5 of these tips are very simple, zero cost to them. Stuff such as locking your doors and windows, your vehicle doors. Don't leave your vehicle running with the keys in it. I know it's winter, but we want to make sure we're not doing that. Leave your valuables out of sight. And keeping your property neat and tidy, which is something that people don't often think about. But when you have a neat, tidy property, it's pretty easy to notice when something might be out of place. And then other things that do cost some money, like some lights on your property, getting a second door lock, beware a dog sign, even if you got a cat, you know, it can act as a deterrent sometimes. Security cameras and local or monitored alarm systems. So just a good read. It's just on Portage Online, just for everyone on council and everyone in our city to just take note of, just to help get everyone protected.
Thank you, Councillor Doyle. And I do think they recommended getting a dog, and we do have a few in the pound right now.
That's
up for adoption.
also very true.
So, win-win.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll call this meeting adjourned at 7:26 p.m.